Hello, and this is my Joe 2001. This is my third installment of the Raspberry Dragon series. So this one is going to be a cute little dragon who's flying. So gonna be going through this pretty fast. If you want to see how I do alpha channels, you can go and see my previous painting for my last dragon video that I did for you. Explained how I do my alpha channels. This one is basically going to be concentrating more on how to go and do facial paintings, and it's going to go and be focusing on backlighting. So gonna go ahead and start just doing our basic background painting, making sure to separate the important sections of the painting. Anytime I decide that something's going to be really important to me, I go and I will create it as a separate group. So if you notice the face, I did it as a separate group, and I also went ahead and did a separate group for the wings. So we're going to go ahead. This is just how I usually go and do my construction section of a painting. And this is just going to go and be for the glass. Most of this is pretty much just done using the Control T button once I go and get my circle put out and everything. And if you'll notice on some of these, I'll do my build out, I'll test to see how I like it, and then I'll decide that I don't like the design very well, and I'll just go ahead and scrap it. So, like this one here, I was going and seeing if I wanted to create a rim for the glass, and decided in the end, nah, that wasn't worth the effort. So this painting I'm actually going and doing for a company called And Puppy Tells. They actually go and they create different types of costume accessories that can go and be added for cosplay and whatnot. And so this is just a little bit of a hat tip towards them. They're going to be using it for their wing section. So just go ahead, a lot of Control T, just make sure to highlight whatever layers you want to go and be controlled by the scale change. This is where we start blocking in our colors. Again, if you notice, I have two different layers already for this. One of them was for my base color, and then the second one was for starting to bring in highlights and whatnot. So here we're going and we're building out the eye. I decided to go with kind of a golden brown for this one because I've been using a lot of greens and blues in my eyes and wanted to do something a little bit different. Again, when you're doing your painting, make sure that your brightest light in the iris is actually in the opposite direction of whatever your light source is. With these, if you notice where the eye is just randomly changing color on the left-hand side, what's happening is basically I just went and I flipped the eye attributes on the horizontal axis. And I can go into further detail on that if people care about knowing how I set up my eyes and how I do them. Now we're just starting to block in the backlighting. This is something that I'll do a little bit of, but I actually wanted to go and do a lot more emphasis on in this one. Bring out the colors a lot more. And you'll notice I actually go and work on his face quite a bit, just on the lips section and nostrils, because I really wanted to go and get the curvature to look right. If you saw in the painting itself, it actually is worthwhile to go and do this extra little bit of effort. Usually when you're going and doing your lighting, you want to go ahead and have it kind of be vague light source first, and then start to define or pull in brighter light sources. This goes and makes it so that it feels more three-dimensional. just doing the eyes right now. If you notice, I'm painting them underneath the actual eyeball group. And the reason why I created the group was this for this specific reason, so that I could go and paint things underneath without affecting the actual eye. In this, we're using a lot of the light reds. This is just to go and make the eyes pop a little bit more. If you notice, there was that little bit of a glitch showing where Adobe Photoshop had crashed. This is the reason why you want to save often. Luckily, I had only lost about 5 to 10 minutes worth of work. Sometimes in some of my older paintings, I would do 5 to 10 hours worth of painting and not save it. So just make sure to save regularly. Now, one thing to notice on the blues, anything that is blue is going to look like it has backlighting. Anything that has like warms, like yellows, warm colors, I should say. So warm yellows or warm reds, those will look like light is hitting them. Blues will look like there's backlighting hitting them or atmospheric lighting. And usually whatever you want to be your primary focus, I like to go and work on that a little bit at first, just so I kind of know what everything else is going to be looking like. Really pretty easy way for you to go and build three-dimensional structures or whatnot. You just go and do your construction lines or whatnot, and then just blur. Make sure to lock down the layers when you do it, though. Otherwise, you'll just have a really fuzzy painting of whatever you're doing. Layer masking for the straw so that you can't see it. You want to usually do layer masking when you're going and working with multiple objects, and the reason being is if in the end you decide you want to move something, you just got to go and adjust the layer mask versus going and painting everything all over again. Again, just using the blue backlighting, making everything have the same feel to it. And now we're actually going into finding out bones. Now, something interesting, and some people tend to screw this up. When you work on the wings, it actually has the same bone structure as your fingers for the most part. So there should always be 5 joints that come up off the mane, and they should all have the same amount of joints as your fingers do. If you look at like a bat's wings and whatnot, that's pretty much what I referenced mine off of, and that's how a bat's bone structure is actually built, is with 5 joints or 5 extensions or limbs. If you notice, I've gone through 3 or 4 different versions on these wings trying to figure out the best lighting for them. In the end, I just went and created separate layers, easier to keep track of stuff. And if it ends up I don't like a certain section, I can just go and hide it versus having to repaint everything. Always be mindful of where your light source is coming from. That'll go and define a lot of what you're doing in relation to how things are going to curve and whatnot. Now this is kind of my more favorite part, is going and creating the muscle tone. Again, just make sure to lock down your layers, then go ahead and do the blur, Gaussian blur. And recycle. Just as an FYI, usually when you're going and doing horns or bones or claws, usually they're going to be skin color. So do like a warm brown, and then go ahead and paint like your yellow white. And then for your backlighting, if your backlighting source is going to be blue, go ahead and just do that light blue, and then do the Gaussian blur on top of it. Pretty simple muscle tone, just pulling in the light sources so that you can go and see easier what's going on. Make sure if you're going in, you're doing any blurs, make sure to go ahead and clean those back up afterwards. You don't want those going and making your painting seem fuzzy. Always make sure to remember you don't want to just have super bright colors. That'll go and kind of defeat the purpose. Sometimes you're going to want to go and pull in some desaturated colors. And what that'll do is it'll add a little bit more realism to your painting. This is where I'm using effects. That's just an easy way to go and change a base color of your painting without actually going and losing all your work that you've done. Now, this is where I kind of started to experiment with things. I liked the plated armor. I thought it looked kind of cool. Um, and I had somebody going and looking at it for me, and they weren't nearly as impressed with it as I was. So, in the end, I decided not to go with the plated armor. And sometimes that'll just kind of be what you get is what you think looks awesome isn't what the customer wants. So the joy of being of doing artwork for companies or for other people is that sometimes what you think looks good isn't necessarily important. And I decided to scrap the plate armor look, so we're actually going to go ahead and do scales instead. Scales are pretty simple. It's just one crescent shape on top of another. Usually what you want to do is just make sure that they go and they follow the curvature of the actual body. So if it's closer to the edge, it's actually going to go and be a sharper or closer together. If it's facing more towards you, it's going to be broader. I also went and I increased the size of the scales on the limbs and on the neck. And part of that was just to go and make them look bigger. Another part was just to go and faster coverage. Now, if you notice the plated scales that I did on the legs, that's pretty much the legs are kind of designed after chickens, and that's how chickens' legs are. Is they have these kind of like flat plated on top. Now, an interesting thing about scales is due to atmospheric perspective, they actually go and they kind of fade out when they're near the edges, and so that's what you're seeing there. So I have the layers locked down. Now all I do is I paint in my brighter greens, and then I go ahead and I blur again, and then I paint in the brighter greens and I blur again. And that's why we got this really cool detail. And that's pretty much the end of this tutorial. Thank you for viewing, and I should be posting another one next week.